Hi everyone. Welcome to our Houston Non-Profit Tableau user group today. Very happy to have you all. My name is Mingyu, and I'm a senior program analyst working at United Way of Greater Houston. My boss, Jessica Davidson, she is one of the co-founder and leaders in the user group. Since I use Tableau on a daily basis, she graciously passes the honor to me to lead the future meetings now. And join me today, Travis Harris is also a new leader to this group. Travis, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Hi everyone. Good to meet you all. I'm Travis Harry, and I'm a data analyst with Baker Ripley, which is a community development organization here in Houston. And yeah, so I've been here a little over a year, like a year and a half or so. And my background is I was in oil and gas for a long time, and then I did some programming courses, some data analysis courses, and got into doing data analysis work in Tableau through that. And so I work with Tableau on a regular basis at Baker Ripley, and excited to be here talking about what we can do with Tableau and what kind of resources we can be for everyone here. Thanks.
Thank you, Travis. Since we have a pretty light participant today, we have time for you all to share a little bit about you. So please share your name, title, agency, and also what brings you to this Tableau user group. Do I have any volunteers want to do self-intro?
I can go. My name's Don Cassidy. I'm coming from let me see if I can say this right, Minnesota. I'm a professor of data analytics, and this is part of my sabbatical. I've created a business analytics certificate, which is a combo of Tableau and Alteryx. And on my sabbatical, I'm almost halfway through it. I'm creating another certificate, and this one's more advanced, focused on the predictive analytics of Alteryx, and also some more higher level, like level detail and higher level dashboarding. So that's why I'm here. I need to do 6 user group meetings anywhere in the world. So you drew the short straw. So that's why I'm here. But I spent this is a second career for me teaching. I used to work for Tyco as a marketing manager, Sprint as a pricing analyst. But I'm a full-time teacher, and so this is my thing. So I've started with Tableau about 5 years ago, ground zero, walking into a class, never taught it, used it. I still don't use it on a daily basis, but I know I have enough background in software that I can swing it. But to me, it's just super exciting to watch students learn, and there's so much demand there for folks. So just being part of that is fun for me. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Welcome.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
And who else?
Hi, I'm Melissa Langston. I work for a small nonprofit here in Houston called Connective. I'm the data analyst on staff. And my real 5-second background, I was in the Navy for a while, and then I worked for the Navy as a civilian, moved back home to take care of some family, and very, very much like Travis, went to a boot camp, got skilled up on Python and Tableau and advanced Excel stuff, and got this job here with Connective. And I've been with them for almost 18 months now.
Thank you.
And
Which boot camp did you do?
I'm sorry?
Which boot camp did you do?
It's called Thinkful.
Thankful?
Mhm.
Okay. I hadn't heard of that one. I did the trilogy one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably very similar, sounds like. A lot of Python.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I think today is Veteran Day, right? So happy Veteran Day. Thank you so much for service.
Of course, I loved every minute of it. Yeah.
Thank you. And who else would like to introduce themselves to the group?
Hi, you don't hear me okay? I'm at a coffee shop in New Orleans. I was at the American Evaluation Conference this week. And my name is Carly, and I am the analytics manager at the Houston Endowment on our learning and evaluation team. I just started about 3 months ago. Similar path. I worked in the nonprofit space more in direct service, went through a boot camp to bolster my data skills, and I was really excited to jump into this position at the foundation. We have Tableau, and I think can use it in a lot more ways. So I'm just excited to learn from you all.
Thank you. Welcome, Chloe. And Celia, Christopher, would you like to introduce yourself or? Okay, maybe they're. Oh.
Yep, trying to unmute. Sorry.
Awesome.
I'm trying to get my picture up on here, but in a way, I started my path at a big financial industry firm in Houston, and I was doing complaints reporting for them and downloading data from Tableau and making my own reports using some Alteryx and some in Excel and whatnot. So I joined on with another company about 8 months ago where we actually develop in Tableau. So this has been a journey on the other end. So I'm just excited to be here and to be a part of this topic.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
And hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Selena Diaz, and I work for a small but very mighty nonprofit here in Houston called Pro Unitas. We are essentially an educational nonprofit working in the tech industry. I do not have any background in Python or Tableau. However, we use a lot of data and we work with school districts here in Houston that what work I have worked with Tableau, we could benefit utilizing this in our organization. My manager sent this to me and says, you should get, it's nice to meet people and learn. And so it sounds like I'm a little behind and would love to join a boot camp. That sounds like that's my starting point. So I'm listening and taking recommendations. Where should I start? Because this sounds like Tableau could be amazing and help us with our data analytics, since I am doing a lot of that probably the harder way in Excel, and would love to figure out how to incorporate that and make our lives a lot easier, as well as providing our clients with things that probably are beyond my human capability, but it's just great to, I'm just learning a lot. So I'll be taking notes and just absorbing it all, and any recommendations for a ground zero starter. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Selena. Welcome. I hope this one can be a good starter for you. And I think we have a new guest. Pardon me if I pronounce your name wrong. Josue. Yeah.
Oh, that's probably me. Hi, I'm Josue.
Oh, sorry.
I'm in New York, so I'm an intruder, but I thought this would be, I couldn't find anything else that was like nonprofit based in New York, and so this was available, and I decided to join. I'm also, like I said, I'm based in New York. I work for City Meals on Wheels. I'm a director of database, and I started this venture into explaining our data with analytics. I did get a Tableau license, and I think I bought the learning courses or whatever, but I just haven't had time to like sit down and start the project. You know, the idea is just to have the dashboards and you know, just explain to everybody in staff what we have. I should say that I have Raiser's Edge as a database, Raiser's Edge from Blackbaud, and I haven't really found any sort of information that's helpful in terms of how to connect data. If there's an easy way, or maybe I need to do it the hard way. But that's the bridge that I need to cross. Making that connection from our database to Tableau.
Happy to talk more about that when we get to our Q&A part.
Great.
Awesome. So thank you. Welcome everyone again. So happy you're all here. And so moving on to the next part, I will briefly share the agenda for today's meeting. So it's pretty straightforward. We're going to have a speaker, Charlotte, going to present how to use census data. And it's going to start around 12:15, so we're right on time. And after the presentation, about 1:15-ish, we will have our Q&A session. Travis will lead that session, so feel free to ask any question, jump into the discussion. So let me introduce our very special speaker today, Charlotte Taft. So Charlotte is a data visualization consultant with nearly 20 years experience in financial services and business intelligence. So with a background in user research and data storytelling, Charlotte creates technology solutions that efficiently support current and future business needs. Charlotte has worked at Moody's Analytics and also Google. She is currently a consultant in the data discovery and visual analytics team at Slalom. Today, Charlotte will present Getting Started with US Census Data. So without further ado, let's welcome Charlotte.
Hi, everybody. Oh God, it's so embarrassing to have a bio read out. I think I have a cut and paste and I was like, oh man. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Make sure I've got the actual slideshow going. I've done that before. Here we go. Am I showing? Good. Okay, there we are. So getting started with census data is the topic. And I thought I'd start out with, of course, I'm getting a little Tableau thing going over it. Just a little bit about me. You gave a nice intro, but that's the on paper part. I have been working with Tableau for, so since 2016 now, which suddenly got a long time. And it felt very confusing at the beginning. I feel like there's an onboarding period where you think, I don't have any idea where any of these pieces go, and you make a lot of mistakes. So one thing I try to do as I go along in this kind of prezo is narrate just try and remember to do this, or I've done this, so let's try and avoid it. And census data, in all of its messy glory, is a great avenue for that, to try and help you guys jump a few steps, trying to get what you need. But what about me? I worked at the places that Mingyu mentioned, but my journey into sort of my villain origin story for data analytics. When I was at Google, I was on the AdWords team, and I loved the big part of my job, which was working with small businesses and people in the community who wanted to promote themselves, and kind of what I think is the glorified good side of that kind of big ad tech. But one part of the job was Google Analytics. And so I actually took a break and ended up working in Eastern Europe for a little while, doing a variety of things. And when I came back, I landed at Callahan & Associates, which is a consulting firm which works just with credit unions. And I think it was my second Tableau conference that I signed up for a group session with the overall nonprofit group. As I realized that credit unions are not for profit, but I do think there's more in common perhaps than with the rest of the financial services industries as they go. But one thing I loved about that is I got good enough at and realized that everyone had questions for each other about Tableau. And the more you can sort of feel comfortable leveraging the community, the better. And so I really encourage you guys, feel free to follow up with me, even if it's something like, I tried to do what you showed us and it's not working, or I have a question about a database connection, that kind of thing. I'm happy to help. And, there's only so many hours in a day. And I'd rather help out that way than just be glued to my computer for work stuff all the time. So it's a great interruption, and it's a pleasure. So feel free. And then with each other, being able to figure out how you can actually help and replicate things. I'm going to show a number of things during the presentation today that are examples of Tableau community putting content out there that can that you're absolutely allowed to reuse, for example. Other things about me, I'm in the DC area, I'm in Virginia and Alexandria. And one of the things I do is middle school sports coaching. I did rowing for a long time. And now I coach 8th graders at DC's only public school rowing team. And you can see them with some monuments in the background, which I felt like was a good little thing. And I'm also the aunt to 2 very outspoken dogs, as you can see there, who are getting a human sister. And so I will have a human niece soon as well, which is going to be exciting. I have been at Solemn since the spring, so I'm still getting used to big consulting. And one thing I do miss about the credit union side of things is we're much more casual and collaborative, rather than, always being, on a project for money. So the more I can get involved with groups like this, both the nonprofit side, but just the Tableau user groups in general, the better. So if you have things I can help you with, let me know. I'm happy to help. Today, so we're gonna roughly do this. I have everything prepped, but we may go off track a little bit. And we have a small group. So if you are confused about something, please feel free to just speak up. We'll save like the meaty Q&A for later, but if there's something like I'm going too fast, or you think I've chosen absolutely the wrong metric, that kind of thing, feel free to jump in. I probably won't see the chat because I'm going to be sharing screens and stuff. So just jump in, but talk a little bit about all of the different kinds of census data we have available, the different ways we can get at it. And it sounds like we've got a variety of backgrounds here. So we're going to go with the lowest common, sort of lowest hanging fruit here. How can I get a couple key pieces of information and get it on a map so we can do something with it at our organization? And then there's a lot of resources that I'll share when I send Ming the deck, hopefully end of today, because I need to paste a lot of them in the last slide still. That there's a ton of resources and great hands-on tutorials out there to say, okay, well, I actually know some Python, like how do I use the census Python? How do I get that side of things connected? Great opportunities. Then we're going to go ahead and jump into Tableau. We'll clean and connect our data, take a look at some initial insights, and then elevate those by connecting them to an interactive map. And then we'll go to Q&A. So that is the overview today. Any questions before we jump in? Okay, great. So I'm actually going to go off camera because I'm going to be looking down here all the time, but let's go ahead and jump in. So where to start? Lay of the land. And hopefully I'm going to be able to tab back and forth easily between our different resources, because I'm going to do web and Tableau as well. So in terms of where I started, and I'm going to kind of use this as an example, but my key recommendation, because there's so much census data out there, is to say, okay, what's the story? And this is actually kind of a teachable moment for me in that I started this and I wanted to tell the story about what percent of people in Harris County in census tracts were living below the poverty line. And I ran into a classic issue with census data, which is it's not everywhere it should be. There's lots of different geographic levels. And who's my audience? You guys. So what are your different backgrounds? I think I picked the right approach for that. And then what data do I have? And that is actually a data point I don't have today. So that is my mistake for not updating. I will. And I'll reveal what we're actually going to dig into in a moment. But I wanted to point out a couple things that are super useful and which will play a role today. If you aren't familiar with Tableau Public, and please let me know is my Chrome screen sharing now, or is it still on PowerPoint?
I think it's PowerPoint, right?
Okay, give me 1 second. I did the classic mistake of a newbie and shared there we go. I shared the PowerPoint and not the window. There we go. Can you see Tableau Public now?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So Tableau Public, just to give everybody background, not everybody may know this, but Tableau Public is designed to be a collaborative place. In a very small nutshell, you can publish your own work there and make it available to anyone you want, or you can mark it private. And what this has resulted in is a really huge set of resources. Some are terrible. Some are just truly next level amazing. That's where Viz the Day goes. And one of the things they've been trying to work on is how are they organizing content? And I just wanted to flag a couple of things. You can search all you want, but there's actually a whole section dedicated to nonprofits and foundations, and including especially some really, really built out board reports, things like that. And the beauty of things on Tableau Public is almost everything is built out. So just for example, and I think they may have turned it off, we'll see, is built out so that you could go in here and for a ton of them, this one won't move for me, and download the workbook. And you're able to replace it with your own data, or just even see how they made it a specific picture, right? Or visual. And this can be a really great tool for just, you know, steal like an artist, I think is the term they use quite a bit in the community. There's, you know, if you're doing something that's obviously a whole compilation of someone's work, maybe you credit them in a little subnote somewhere, but you're not the first person making a bar chart or a map. So go ahead and accelerate your work by using other people's. And that's very much encouraged and is part of the purpose of the platform. Now, to go back to the PowerPoint for a second, I highly recommend checking out those pieces. There's also a section on maps, and you can also use it to connect with people, to actually reach out. There's a new hiring function. I haven't explored that, but it is a really wonderful jumping off point, and we'll be returning to that in a second. And then on the other side, we have Census Data, which is our hub for two key things for this presentation. One, we're going to download some data. We're going to see what data is there, and then we're also going to be able to get the actual shapefile for the maps we want. Tableau, if you have a field in your data, right, that is a really commonly known geographic code, so a state name, it'll map it for us. But one of the things we wanted to do today was map to census tract level to give us a really detailed view of what might be happening in Houston communities. So I'm going to go into that a little more data today. So getting our data. I was going through to see if there were any updates in kind of best practices around census data and Tableau, because they are adding things all the time. And I came across this quote in the community help forum, and it's pretty accurate. Welcome to the wonderful world of ACS data and Tableau. It's ugly. What you may ask is ACS. So, and we're going to switch over to the census site itself in a moment. There are a ton of different specific programs running in the census. And the one I tend to use for my own work is the American Community Survey. There are a ton of other ones, so that if you have particular questions or topics you want to make visualizations about, you can almost always find some kind of data on it. The caveat is going to be, do they have it at the geographic level I want? So in this context for today, I wanted it at census tract level. There's data sources that go all the way down to block groups, and all the way up to the whole country, and certainly states and counties, which can be very helpful. But it really depends on the level your organization's working at, right? And I use the community survey because it's refreshed annually. There are two types of it. There's the 1-year estimate and the 5-year estimate. The 5-year estimate ends up being slightly more accurate. It can be slower to be released. Whereas we have the decennial census, that 2020, 2030, where you get a big time gap, right? So we have the 2020 census, but if I were in 2019 and I had to choose between the 2018 ACS and the 2010 census, that's kind of a no-brainer. We're in one of the couple years where nothing's too stale, but it's a big factor. So we're going to jump in and take a look at some American Community Survey data. And we're also going to pull ourselves a map file. So to that end, back to Chrome. So there is the main census data webpage, but I want us to take a look today at, if you just were to type in, and I'm going to have all these links in the PowerPoint that we'll send out, by the way, in data.census.gov. And they've upgraded this. I believe they re-released it last year, and this is miles better. There's still plenty you can complain about, but if you're looking for some really straightforward, low-hanging fruit, you can find just about anything. And they've actually built in a ton of different pre-built visualizations, things you can export. For example, you can get little data profiles on specific tracks. Today, I want us to look at the tables because we want to pull some tabular data that we can put into Tableau. And so when you get in here, you're going to have a bunch of different filter areas. And you could even start out by going, okay, I don't know, poverty, which is the topic I picked because it can usually has some type of impact on just about anything. And we've got all these different crazy different tables. And it by default is going to give us a little table overview so you can see what's in the different tables. We could find a variety of different things. They'll group it overall. They group it by family groups. You could look at what are some characteristics of people who are already deemed to be within some variation of the census's poverty designation. How are they breaking out? And I have had some very fruitless searches over time. And so it's worth spending a little time poking around in here. And the reason for that is that some of it will be at the tract level, some of it won't. Sometimes it's fine to have something at a rolled up level, like say the Houston, overall area, because then you can do a contrast and say, oh, okay, so what's the percentage of children in poverty in the area I'm working with versus overall or the like, even if you can't get a certain thing. There's a lot of data on the use of different various assistance programs. And if we were to kind of leave our search and go back to the overall, clear our search criteria, there's even more. Obviously, there's a lot of economic characteristics. You can find detail on all the way down to the number of people by housing unit, educational levels, commuting times, you name it. So it's a very powerful resource. There are a number of levels to the types of tables, and if we're talking ACS. So the one I want to talk about today, because it's a great jumping off point. There's 4 key tables to the ACS, and one of them is DP03. That is our selected economic characteristics, because I wanted just to focus a little bit on what's our overall profile here. And you can see here, we've got some employment status data, unemployment rate. Okay, it's always going to give you margin of error and various pieces here, which of course is statistically good, but for a quick swath, sometimes we forget about paying too much attention to it. How the labor force is breaking down, how commuting is broken down in your area, some really big occupational roll-ups and industries. Now, there's a lot of meat when you get into how households and families break down by income bracket. And they'll also give additional information on retirement, SSI, et cetera. And then where I was thinking about focusing today, and I got a little hamstrung, which I'll tell you about, is, okay, let's take a look at median income, and then this lovely piece of data here. Wait, we've got an estimate missing for a percentage of families and people whose income is designated to be below the poverty line. We have percentages, so that's good, but we don't actually have data numbers. And this is going to have to do with the different survey we're looking at. The smaller an area, the more difficult it is for the census to do anonymization. Sometimes if data is not available, it's going to be a result of A, they haven't processed it yet, or they don't collect it at that level. But a lot of the time it's actually because, say, and this probably isn't as relevant for Houston, so it may be in the prior 2 categories, but if there's too few people in a given census tract and some type of aggregated data like we have in here would make it very easy for you to say, okay, well, it's obviously John Smith who is mortgaged and the other ones aren't, or something. So they try to do things to make sure that there's a level of anonymity to census data results. I know that missing data can be very frustrating. We'll see kind of how it works in practice, because it's one thing to have percent, and you can kind of back it out if you have some total family number. But when you get into detailed information, you can sometimes go in circles. So we're going to skip over a little bit of that today, but it's sort of an important caveat. Now, if I've got this DP, selected economic characteristics, and I know I want it for Houston. So you can go in, and we wanted to do tract. So we're going to go ahead and pick. This is the time where Minghu's like, oh, actually, this is Houston, Missouri, but thankfully I know I'm right there. Built it all around Texas. And we'll find Harris County. And we want all the census tracts. And it is so big because we've gone in, just massive table, and you can click to download the table and pick the most recent year we've got. And that's going to process in the background. While that processes, let's go ahead and find our data for the map portion of our conversation today. So if we were looking for maps, you can find about 1 million shapefiles, but I actually really like the census cartography boundary files because they update them quite regularly. And you typically, as I mentioned, don't need them for the bigger groups, but it is a really good way to find them for smaller things. So whether you might be looking at tracts, as we will today, You can also get them at a number of other types of levels. And actually, I think that this is a different link than I had. Yep, that was the previous year. So you can find block groups, tracts, tribal stacks, congressional areas, whatever you might be looking to report on. And it's as simple as searching and we'll download it. So that's downloading, that's downloading. So let's return here. We've got our initial data source. Now, there's a number of ways to pull it. We just looked at data.census.gov, which has a ton of information. There's also a whole Python library for it. And there is a Census API. And the nice folks of the census actually presented this at a Tableau conference. And it's the route I'm going to take you through, because unless you're looking to routinize and create a whole database of census data, this can be a very useful way to use the API without having to feel like you know a ton about APIs. I know that feeling well. You can also clean up your data. I want to caveat that. I know a couple folks are talking about using Alteryx or Tableau Prep, for example, and those are great. Not everybody wants to learn another tool, or you don't want to pay the license fee, as the case may be. So I wanted to show you something that has been super useful for me, and I come back to it regularly in work I've done. There's a little tool that the actual Tableau team, there's a ton of Tableau all over the census websites if you take a look. So why they haven't made the data extracts more friendly, I don't know. But there is a way to do this fairly easily. We downloaded, and you may be asking, didn't we just download the data? So to roll back for a moment, if I export the data from, come on. Okay, you're gonna get to explore my desktop for a second. Apparently it doesn't want to bring it up. One moment. So if you export the data set, what you're gonna get is a fabulous and overwhelming document that looks like this. And we've got our long GeoIDs, we've got our names, but up here we've both got these kinds of names for all our fields. Let's wrap our text. And we have our columns named by code. The result is going to be, if you could hook this up to Tableau, you absolutely could. And you could manually go back and figure out which of these you want, because these names are not the column header. Now you could make them the column header, but I'm guaranteeing you right now, you're going to run into a whole bunch of problems with this. And there are a lot of fields. We're in the three-digit letter column names. So as a workaround, we're going to go ahead and use the census extractor, which I'm going to walk us through. Now, when you do the export that gives you that, there's actually something that comes with it that can be very useful as you say, okay, which fields did I want? It's there's a zip file that downloads. It'll look like this. And it's going to have a column metadata file, and it's going to have a data file. The first thing I showed you was the data file. The column metadata is this. And that's going to give you, if you need it, which you may or may not, a mapping of these code names to their labels. Now, keep that in your back pocket. We're here, and we know we want ACS, American Community Survey data. You can actually go in here and click. Of course, it's going to reload on me. And we can take a look here. So I mentioned we've got some topic tables, and we're looking today at economic. And okay, I know I want a tract level breakdown. This is a very meta narrative. We're using Tableau to Tableau. And we want Texas. It actually will make you, because these files are so big. And then let's take a look. So I know that there could be a ton of really interesting stuff in here, but for our purposes today, I'm just going to check income and this poverty level thing. And we'll close it back up. And all I have to do then is run it and extract it. Oh dear. Too many variables. So we're going to pick all families to give ourselves a count of families. We're going to pick family income brackets and median and mean income. And then I want, there we go. That should work for us. Let's run it. can't stop me because I saved my query. You have to choose fewer than 50 variables, which is the primary thing there. And what does this load? This loads nonsense to any normal person. However, if you have read enough blogs and worked with enough developers, they're going to tell you that this is actually data. And it's as simple as going save as, and you're going to type in a name. We're going to use a file that I already worked with a little bit, but let's say example census, and you type .csv at the end, and then you're going to be able to open it as a CSV file. And that file is a little more reasonable. We've got only about 26 plus some little bit of geo info, far more handleable. Now, there are a couple things we have to do, and let's just swap over here for a second. We do need, this is where I'm going to document it for you. We do need to clean it up a little bit. And so I did want to share a couple of tips because I've been burned too many times. So once you get that raw file and you open it up, save it as, and save it as an Excel file and not a CSV. I then always copy a tab and then work with the tab in question. And then we're going to have to do just a little bit of visual cleanup. Because if we take a look here, we can see that the output, and there's some ways to do this dynamically, but it can be as simple as doing Control F and removing what you can see here are the little quotation marks and the brackets. And that's going to give us this guy. And up top, what I did was I just went ahead and I did a VLOOKUP. So I pulled that column data. Remember that we downloaded when we downloaded the full data table. And I popped it in here and I did a lookup and then pasted the values in of what these are. Now, if you're only looking at a couple things, I kind of over gilded the lily and pulled a lot of things in, but you could just do it manually with a cut and paste as well. Now, I want to point you to something. So this is our primary geographic identifier here, if you can see this Geoid. And over on this end, they're giving us a name. Okay. So we know we're in the right place. We know we got some of the right data because we did download all the tract data for all of Texas. And I'm seeing they're giving us a state and a county and a tract number. What the heck does all of that mean? So this is a little bit of an important prelude, especially if you're going to go and play with this data in Excel, which is a very reasonable thing to do. That GeoID was this. And I am forgetting for a moment what the 14 million, et cetera, number is, but we're really only concerned with the numbers after the US marker. And it probably has to do with country coding that we are not dealing with. The full census tract number that we'll see in census data and in the census map file, importantly, is this. It breaks down sort of sequentially. 48 is the state number for Texas. 201 is the county number. You may often see a 5-digit county number so that we can differentiate. And then we have our tract number. And because they like to be difficult, and some tracts have sub areas or they've renamed them and reconfigured things and they like to keep a certain degree of organization that is unique to themselves, there's actually a dot in there if you're seeing it elsewhere. But this comes into play when we actually want to join together that Excel sheet we have with the shapefile that we downloaded a few moments ago. And I'm going to do this I'm going to do this together. But you can see here, once we bring our data in, which we'll do in a moment, I put in the shapefile and it has a file, a name for Geoid. Now its Geoid is this number, but the Geoid in our Excel spreadsheet is this number. So we're going to do a custom calculation and just take the right 11 digits of it. You have a couple options here. You could go ahead and you Control F and remove, 14,000,000 US from all of them. If you want to do that, that is fine. You can feel free to customize as much as you want. I just say version control for yourself in case you make a mistake, because I have done that many times. So let's move over to Tableau. If my computer would like to participate. There we go. So the first thing we're going to do is geospatial files can be a little bit particular. We have it downloaded, and if you look in your file folder, it's going to show as a compressed file. You don't need to unzip that. It's got a whole bunch of different pieces in it that allow it to perform in the way we want to. If you're a spatial data expert, you might quibble with me but feel free to use your expertise that way. But all we need to do is click open, and it's going to automatically add the single piece from the workbook here. And we can kind of explore here. If you take a look, you can see it's got these fields and got our physical table name, etc. Okay, and we know that I had mentioned we have a GeoID. And you can see over here, one thing I've done in the past is gone ahead and added it in, and we'll do it together. Let's add in our data file, which I saved as an Excel. And it's going to go in, and what it's going to do is it's going to give you a default join, which, you know, sometimes is super helpful. In this case, however, we don't want to join on name. We don't know how different the names are. It might very well have automatically joined on GeoID, right? But we also saw that GeoID for this one was shorter. So what we want to do is go in, and I find that once you learn how to do this, you do it too often potentially. But we just have to do a quick calculation, right, comma 11. So we're telling it of the GeoID field, we want to take the 11 from the right side. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. And something I'll tell you now. So this file, our file, has all the tracks, and this has all the tracks. I, by default, do a left join, so we keep all the spatial data. And this can be really useful sometimes. So I don't know if you've ever tried to do, for example, say we were doing this and we had data on 6 counties in Texas. And we didn't want to have the map just show those 6 counties. We want to keep the whole shape of Texas. You get all the counties here, and then you can add this in and just gray out the counties you don't have data for. It's a much nicer mapping experience, and we'll see an example of that. So we've got this done. Okay, now let's go ahead and jump in. So you can see we've got a lot of confusing stuff. This is long, and these things are named like nonsense, in my opinion, but it's from a database, and so we all have to make concessions. But the big thing you want to focus on with a shapefile is you're going to see a field called geometry. Well, we can just go ahead and drop that in, which in my mind is basically magic. It's going to pull through its insides a lat long. But when we hover, we can see it's acting like one thing. And that's because we need to tell it the level of detail. And that is as simple as pulling GeoID onto detail. And now when we hover, we can see that there's a lot more granularity, which is the whole point, of course, of using census tracts. We could have just used counties if we really wanted to. And we can see that there's big old census tracts out in the rural areas. But I actually, I think we're all agreed that in this case, for the Houston Nonprofit group, we would really like to focus on Harris County. So our first step is going to be go ahead, and I think we know that we don't really know all of these. So I'm going to give you a tip. Name. And we can go ahead and search. When I go through these and I haven't explored a data set, there's a lot of trial and error. I might have pulled census tract name. Let's see what they show us for that. Okay, that's not helpful, right? So a little bit of trial and error. And it's gone ahead and filtered us down to Harris County, which is a big step. As we are here, we do know that we don't totally know what all of these things mean. And so, did I pull these on or did you? So let's go ahead. If we hover over, it's just showing a GeoID, but that's not super useful. So let's go ahead. And again, if you see this here, it's automatically separated our data by the 2 data sources. So clean, which is a very bad example of naming conventions, is our census data. And this is our census geodata. So let's go ahead and highlight these and just drag them onto tooltip, because this means now when we hover, we can see all of them. So we can kind of rule out, we don't need AFGeoID or LSAD, right? And we aren't going to use state because it's Texas. I think we could just keep names and GeoID because we're going to need it for something. So I can click here, and if I hit shift and click these, and let's unclick by holding shift and just keep these guys, our names. And I'm going to right click, and it's not going to let me hide them because we're still using them. So let's take them off. And let's go ahead and right click again. I'm using them elsewhere, but you should be able to right click and hide them. Apologies. So let's take the ones we want again. and put them back on tooltip. So we've got a little bit more of a sensible thing here. Okay, so that's all well and good. What else is in our data set? So if we pop over here, the thing I often like to do, frankly, is just to go ahead and pull them all onto the canvas. If you have the size of the data set that we might have started with, the enormous one from the census, this would be very difficult. And likewise, these names are very long. There's some tips, and I may try and include a template I use sometimes for if you want to try and clean up these names in a systematic way. But if you've gone through and manually picked them, it can be a lot simpler that way. So we've got these. And I can see that I know I'm going to want families, right? Because this is going to give us the total number of families by census tract. So if I hover, I can see that. Let's see, I want just families. And of course, this is not letting us go out far enough. Another valuable teachable lesson about organizing these well. There we go. That's families. So I'm going to rename that number families. Good. And we've got a number of other things here. These guys are a breakdown of income, so we can see number of families in each income bracket. And I know the ones I want are in this group. And I'm actually going to go ahead and switch this over to organizing by folder so I can help me help myself. And I believe these are all of they. Create a folder, income bracket. I'm just going to make sure I didn't make mistakes. Yep. Didn't want to put median income in there, so we'll take it out. And if that is the median family income in dollars, we're going to rename that one family median income. Okay, so we've got a couple more here. It's making a little more sense. Although that is a big question mark for me. We'll come back to that in a moment about why there's some inconvenient things. So this is a great way to get started here. Now let's go back to the map and then we're going to put these two pieces together. Okay, so if we wanted to make the map show in any way, the classic way to use it is to use a piece of data to color it. So if we have median family income, let's see if this will participate for us. Okay, I just took median family income and I dragged it onto color. Show you again, it would be like this, and you drop it. Now, something is wrong here. I don't think I'm a rocket scientist to think it. So we could go through these one by one and try and figure out what's going on. But if you hover and look there at the bottom of the tooltip, it's saying -666. It's kind of spookily done. What we can do this is we can, and here's a control tip I like. I like to hit Control, click, drag to move things around. Let's go ahead and see. So let's set this to 0 because income will be that. There we go. So now when we hover, we feel a lot more confident about it. And we can see, so for example, here, the median family income is $218,000 and change. We're going to want that to be formatted like a dollar. And if you want that format everywhere, you can actually hover over the field itself and right click and default to a number format. So now it's always going to show this way. Excellent. So what if we wanted a different color range than that? We could pick something else. Or we could think about, let's see, we know our median income by census tract. Now, I was hoping we'd have poverty, but if we see percentage of families whose income is below the poverty level and we put it on here, it's not giving us anything. And this is because this is one of those examples where they did not provide it in this particular release. You can find it, but sometimes you have to dig into a lot of subfolders. They exist. But for our purposes today, I wanted to actually use this as a pivot example. So we don't have that, but if we were to say, okay, compared to the metropolitan area, how does that median income compare? So let's undo And if you don't know this already, Tableau has a miraculous, basically unlimited undo feature. So you can either click back or do Control-Z to get to where you were before, which I use incessantly. Now, if we go back over here and clear our filters, if I'm thinking, okay, so what is the median family income for Houston? They're calling it the Houston, the Woodlands metropolitan area. So if we want to do that, we've got our same table, but we can just change a different geography. So let's do metropolitan statistical area, and we'll take ourselves back down. The precise boundaries of these do change yearly, and I should probably just search here. And because it's fairly small, it's going to load for us. So we know what we wanted was a little bit of family income information. And I just wanted to point something out that you may run into is that households and families are different. They're defined in a couple different ways, but essentially household is non-family households, but some families can be non-family family households. So it's a little bit tricky, but there's more households than families in a nutshell. We know that what we're looking at is families. So I'm going to go down here and we can see that they're giving us a median family income for the whole area of $81,859. So if we want these colors to change over to be, for example, percent of MSA income, we could do the following. We could do sum, and I apologize if this is small on the screen, sum of median, family median income, which we had relabeled, and then divide it by, you could create a field for this. I am going to be a little bit lazy. Go back over here, 81859, like that. Call it percent of family income. Okay, we've got our new field that pops up right here. Let's go ahead and put that on. Okay. You can see if you hover, it's that bottom field. I don't love it being a decimal. So again, we're going to use our new friend default number formatting and change it to a percentage with 1 dot. So now we can see, yep, there's a lot of that. But let's play with the color a little bit more. We've got this on here and you can see it's 20% to 305. We could get this a lot more custom. First off, I kind of want a good bad. Not that there's a moral aspect tied to poverty, but we more want to use the darker color as in alert. There's actually a lot of areas here making below median, right? And we can actually do something here. We could create stepped color to kind of make it bucket a little differently. I don't know if I love that. And you can also go to advanced and set your start and end. I don't have a problem with the start and end because it's actually based on the correct numbers, but let's set the center to 1. Because then it'll be essentially the hot or cold is above or below median. And that changes the picture a bit from what we had before. We can see that there's a above median core and then a ring where we're at or below median. Okay. So what else could we do here? I think that we want to start upgrading a little bit. So oops, apologies, guys. So I liked our way of doing it better. So we're just gonna color the map live and go from there. So if you want to do additional things to your map, there's a bunch of options that I wanted to show you. So if you go up to the top here, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving as well as I can, and go to map, there's a lot of cool things you can do. You can actually switch these around. Normal. Some people, it depends how artistic you're trying to be. I'm not going to be that artistic. And let's just go with that. But let's go back to the beginning and show you the plain canvas. And if you go to another option, so background layers, you can see we've got a bunch of options here. You can switch to those styles, which give you a lot more with the little visual key. And there's something called washout. Sometimes on certain maps, I will turn the washout all the way up. So we're super focused on the area we've got right here, for example. If you want a little more detail, so it's not like, what is this floating segment? We we could turn it down so it's a little less detail. We can even add things, for example, like county borders and names, because then it really calls out where we are. And maybe we'll turn the washout a little bit up so that it's just not quite as strong. We want to keep our focus here. Now, what else can we do if we wanted to show someone this map, say Tableau publish it, publish it to Tableau public very quickly? Well, I can tell you that hovering and seeing that information is unappealing. So let's see. If we go in here and we click tooltip, make sure this is big enough. We've got all our fields. I know I want, just for example, to take this one, which we should have renamed, but I was trying to make sure we don't run out of time. And we can go ahead and cut and paste it. And as you go along trying to format this, you can hit preview. So we've just moved Harris County to the top. And we actually have state as well. So we might as well move that as well. And we'll add a comma. And then we have a tract name. Which one was that? We can see name LSAD. I'm sure LSAD has a very relevant acronym within the census, but for us, we needed to check. Move that here. And you could do quite a bit of formatting. So I'm going to change this one to bold. These are already bold as well, but maybe we'll make them a little bigger. Make this one biggest. And I'm going to make it a fun color. See how that's looking. Okay, now we've got a header. And we know we've got our data point there. So let's delete these guys and hit OK. Now we're showing these things. Now, the map itself is colored by percent of MSA income. That's all well and good. But it probably would be useful to have a counterpoint like the actual MSA income. So to do that, we can go ahead and family median income. I'm going to rename that for our purposes and say tract family median income. And let's just pull that on here as well. Now we take a look. Didn't update. Well, that's because it's custom. So all we have to do is go in here. I'm going to cut and paste. And then highlight that. If you go to insert, anything you've put on that tooltip or detail tile is going to be available. So now we have sum of tract median income. And we should just change our label. Okay, and I want it to match, so I'm going to go bold and pick this one. There we go. So now we have a little more of a comparison point. There we go. Okay, so our map has come along quite a bit. What else can we do with it? Well, I think if we dig into the data a little bit, see all my templates I made, pardon me, we can go in and play with our data a little bit more. So let's go ahead. We know that LSAD, name LSAD, is our census tract name. Let's see if we can pick just the data points we actually care about here. So over here, I know I already have number of families. You can drag that. You can also double click. So if you double click that, it'll show up. We're going to see some weird ones. And let's try and figure out how we could normalize that. This is already a percentage. So let's go ahead and put in what that actual median income was. See why? So I think here we've got some errors. And we could go ahead and exclude them. You kind of have to make a decision yourself, right? So for our purposes here, this might be correct, and it probably is, but we've got some issues here. So we can choose to exclude the data points that don't work. So let's go ahead and sort how many of these are looking wrong. And you know what, actually, I realized something. We're looking at all the census tracts. We actually still want to be looking at Harris County. So let's put county back on here before we freak out. Oops. And although I showed you guys the state of Texas at the beginning, that was primarily for expository purposes. So I'm actually going to go here to the drop down, and I'm going to choose to all worksheets using this data source so that when we go back and look around, we're not going to accidentally have data for the wrong area. Okay. You can see here, there's obviously some general calculations that were going on to do that. But I don't think Yes, we do have some that are still off. How to handle? Well, let's take a look at the map and see where those might be. To do that, we know we filtered them out already, didn't we? How does that work? We go back here. Why don't we go? I'm super curious. So let's do at most 0 and see which tracks we're talking about. Okay, so it's not that many actually. And this is, I think, actually water. Correct me if I'm wrong. Houston. In any event,
Industrial area.
is that the industrial area? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the ship channel.
So there's there may be reasons for it. It's a little tricky because, and this is where some local expertise actually makes huge difference, is because now we're over here looking and we're saying, okay, some of these are super off for, obvious reasons, because this is the problem. Here, we've got all of these, but although some have a fair number of people, we may just want to exclude them. I'm not excluding with that. And that was not the way to do it. So let's take this. And we're going to start with that minimum of 0. And I'm also going to apply that everywhere so we don't run into other issues. You could, alternatively, if you really wanted to have a complete map of families, you could do something like create a calculated field and say, if the tract family income equals 6666666, etc., then null, else tract family median income. And then use that field instead of median income, essentially. So it would be a blank spot for those instead of something that we exclude. But I think for now, we can be in a fairly good shape. One thing that might be interesting, and of course now, I'm not sure I left enough time for the number of things. Okay, let's circle back to that because there's something else I wanted to touch on from the perspective of you guys. So we have all of these different tracks and we've got a little bit of data here. Was there anything else you wanted to include? I'm going to check the sheet I made myself. Mean, I think we can do without the average. There's a lot of skewing. Okay. And I don't like these headers. I don't know about you guys, but let's go ahead. You can either rename the field if you have a reason not to want to, or you would like to go the example. I'll show you, you can hit edit alias. And we're going to do number of families. Mean. So I think we can be average people and say average income. Median family income. And I made an assumption and didn't read carefully. And what I just aliased as median family income is actually median earnings per worker, which, while fascinating, is actually not what I wanted to include. So I'm going to undo and take that off. And let's go ahead and pull on our percent of MSA median income. And, we could even be fancy and just give people something to chew on and do. I'm going to go duplicate and edit. Why don't we take a look at difference from, let's say, so we'll have that. Oops, let's do it this way. We're going to take that MSA income and we'll subtract the tract median income from it. No. Undo all of our work. Okay, we'll add that in. Sometimes that's a little easier to grab hold of than a percentage, which is why we would want to update the default number formatting to a dollar amount. Okay, and I think that can be very powerful where you realize just how different it is from the median. So for this, we can, for example, say that although it's 49% of median income in for about over 1,000 families in that area. And what that actually means is they're $41,000 short a year from whatever median income might be projected to say that is the amount you need to live there, for example. You could also pull in things like, I know we've got people from United Way at a county level more than a census tract level. You could pull in and use, instead of medians, you could pull in ALICE data or thresholds of your own that your company, your organization may use. There's a lot of ways to pull in your own data. And there's something else that, since we have a few minutes before the Q&A is supposed to start, I wanted to show us. One, let's just do a quick visin tooltip. How about we make this look nice? Let's do this. I'm going to format it a little bit. Let's format our measure names, and we'll make them blue, and we'll make them a little bit bolder. And for reasons that you'll understand in a moment, I'm going to select show entire view, which looks awful, obviously, but we're going to call this sheet visin tooltip. Oops. And this might be, for example, if you wanted to do more than a table, but I wanted to just show the way this can work. Oops. So now, if we go to, I apologize, I've been between too many sheets. I think we did it on map upgrades. One moment. There we go. Well, tooltip. You go to insert, and instead of scrolling down and picking things, you go to sheets. And we picked visin tooltip. Let's just see if we don't format it, what does this look like? Okay. Not quite right. Let's make it wider. Now we're getting there. This is a way that you can pull in other things in a more readable format. Or if we were doing comparison, for example, or a breakdown, you could maybe create a bar chart. I pulled these over already, but this was the different income brackets. Let's flip this around. And let's just, for our example here, pick one. What we have here is the number of families in each income bracket. To make this really good, but I think we're going to be just short of time, what we would want to do is just rename them. So let's alias them real fast. Okay, you're going to forgive me. So we would carry on and alias them that way. But instead, we're going to make it a bar. Sorry, I had pre-formatting on here and now I'm going out with the opposite of a bang. Measure values. No. I will build this and put it in the one I send along. I apologize. Because they are not part of the whole, we have to do a little bit of background work. So the last thing I wanted to show, and I'm just going to leave Tableau for a moment, is something that can be really useful. So for example, say you are looking to highlight where all of your donors come from, or you're looking to map all of your own locations if you have a lot of locations or different school locations. Another thing that the census has, and that you can also do through some pretty easy Python, is geocoding. So I imagine if you have a list of donors and you might want to map the dots of those donors onto a map, what you may want to do is export a list of their addresses, and then you can actually go to the Census reverse geocoder. And this handy dandy tool, if you upload a list of addresses, you can either find addresses or you can do a batch address process. And you choose your file, and what it's going to spit out is a list of the latitude and longitude of everything. And I'm going to show you how you might handle that They don't give us our Latin long in here. In the follow-up, I'll include it in my workbook, but you can actually make a point, and all you have to do is add in your latitude and longitude in the equation, and then drop the geometry file that comes out of that right on top of this. You pull it on here, and it will allow you to add the dots on top of this map, which I wish I'd asked someone for an address file, so I could have gone ahead and done that. But I know we're almost up to time. I wanted to see, believe that is pretty much the bulk of the things that I had prepared slides for. I'm going to add to this list, as well as make sure that the steps I took in what I just walked you through are covered. I know that this was kind of my sparkle and splash overview slides, but I will make sure that the instructions are in here. Mingy, if you don't mind giving me to Monday to get you that, we can get that out with the recording. But I just wanted to say thank you, everybody. I've got a couple more pieces of background on how things are calculated, but there's a lot of wonderful tools out there. Just within the census, they have a bunch of different courses you can actually take and look at, from geocoding to all sorts of different pieces that you can find information with, including, say, finding things with R. And then there's also some great Tableau blogs. This is a great one that I will make sure to include, but it gives you a really basic way to use the Census API within a Python notebook, which I don't know if for those of us that are doing a little bit of on the fly coding, you can use Google Colab instead of paying for a Jupyter notebook. And it's as easy as pulling things, if you're familiar with that kind of code language, and then pull them in. There's a lot of different ways that you can leverage maps in Tableau, and you can see people coming back to my old favorites with the boundary files, but I'll go ahead here. I have to say, mapping is one of my favorite things. To talk a little bit about of course, I've been signed out again. Excuse me for one moment. In my previous work, and then just for fun, I've done a lot of mapping that you can find on my Tableau public profile. A lot of it is slightly well, more than slightly credit union slanted, but you're getting the secret view of what it looks like. But things, for example, like, where was our version we did? Apologies here. So this credit union example that I put together on a similar call was, if you have census data and you have information about, say, for example, how many banks are in an area, you can end up with a lot of different things. You can pull in your own data. For example, we had data on the loans by county and loan amounts, borrower income, and ended up putting it together into a workbook that you could use in a number of different ways. As well as a variety of other pieces. But there's a lot of different maps, not just my own, that are sort of boring and financy looking, but this is the one I was looking for, where you can actually then go ahead and overlay locations onto your colored map that has census information, such as home value there. If there's particular things that you think I went too quickly on today, that you want to make sure I cover, either if you have a question for me and you want to reach out one-to-one, I'll make sure that my email address is in the PowerPoint, but I'm also charlotte.taft@slalom.com, and that's slalom just like the skiing term. And well, I might as well hand over to Travis for Q&A, because I think I've hit my time limit, but thank you guys. I appreciate it. I hope this was useful. I know that census data is messy, but I hope I didn't make you feel intimidated about it. Frankly, there's a little bit of a lift to wrangle it a bit. If you're not afraid to just relabel your columns and jump in, you're going to be just fine. As you scale up, you start to create other ways to do it. But,
yeah, thanks so much, Charlotte. I mean, that was really cool to be able to see, just in that map that you created, you can see right there the Houston arrow, the blue center with the arrow shape and orange around. That's just right there is something that people have done a number of studies on, and you've shown us how in an hour we can be creating those sorts of things ourselves, when previously that was something that was just the domain of places like Kinder Institute or other well-funded research institutions. But that's stuff that's within our grasp right now. So that's pretty neat to see.
It truly is. And if I didn't get you feeling like you can do it, contact me and we'll figure out how to make sure you feel that way. Oh, also, I see Don, you're sharing a bunch of stuff about that. Tableau, as well as Alteryx in these places, often you'll be able to get licenses or other types of things. I think that might be what the links are for. So if you don't have a
Yeah.
license at work yet, it's
Yeah,
probably
you
a way
know,
to get one.
first of all, it was awesome, and I'm going to steal this for my class. These ideas, I've been struggling with this. So I know Tableau fairly well, but the whole geocoding, I don't know Python. It's like that. Just like I'm searching the blogs, and I'm